Thank you everybody for coming. This is our unveiling event for the website that's part of our project, which we'll get into in just a second. I'm going to have Luciana come up here and sort of just describe, first of all, I'm going to call up our little agenda, and she can sort of describe what this project is part of a bigger project that the archives handles at the city, and I'll let her talk about that first, I think, is the right thing to do.
Hi, welcome to the Adams Building in the City of Savannah. I'm Luciana Spraker. I'm the director of the City of Savannah's Municipal Archives. And this residency project kind of falls under a larger umbrella that we call the Savannah Community Memory Project. The city's archives has sort of been evolving this project probably since about 2016. We started working first with Carver Village to help gather some of their history with the residents of that neighborhood and what we were calling History Roundup, because we were starting to plan to build the arena at that time, and we knew that it was going to be important to document the communities around the arena. And then that evolved into us going out and working with other neighborhoods and collecting oral histories. And then we started looking at other communities, which led to the Savannah Proud History Project. And it just sort of kind of started blooming and blossoming into other projects. And then we were like, well, we really need to let other people start thinking creatively about collecting memory and what does community mean, and how can we collect that creatively and then share that back out creatively. So City Council a couple of years ago funded our residency proposal to put out an RFP to then fund a residency team to identify a community and a project to then collect memory and then put out a creative project. So the Faith in Action project was funded through our first ever Savannah Community Memory Project residency. So we're really excited to see the results of our first residency. And you know, we sort of define communities very broadly, because community can be anything, a group of people. That could be a neighborhood, that could be, you know, a collective group of people. In this case, it ended up being about interfaith, and I'm going to let Eric talk about how they identified what their community was in this case. But it's really an opportunity for us to think about Savannah more broadly and what it means to be part of community together. So hopefully this is the first of many residency projects that will help us look at Savannah and what it means to come together and then share that information back out. And the work then becomes part of the archives, where it's going to be preserved and shared for many generations to come, which is also very exciting to us. So I'll come back at the end and talk about how this project then is accessible through the archives as well.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through basically how we got to the place where we were making a website, and I'll introduce our team. I'll take you into like what we did over the course of the year, and then finally just a walkthrough of the website. So that's generally what we're doing. I have a nice quote from the Dalai Lama to get us started, which sort of encapsulates our entire ethos behind the project, that we believe that this sort of is a pan theological perspective where all major world religions at least share some commonality. A little spiel here just for posterity on why our team and myself specifically thinks it's important to study interfaith relations, especially for young people, and that's what this website is really geared toward primarily. And we don't have to read it here, you guys, but basically the general gist of it is that we believe that studying interfaith relations helps young people to navigate the world today in a way that they might not be as ready to do with such a complex and interconnected world that we're all living in. So our proposal that we sent in, which ended up being selected by the city, was called Faith in Action: Perspectives on Savannah's Interfaith Community. And it's really kind of twofold. The proposal stated right up front our statement of interest. They asked for that from the city. And our primary reason was because of the history in Savannah, the groundwork was sort of laid for an interfaith community to take root and flourish in Savannah. And, so our project sort of set out to make that case, but through the voices of our community participants. Tom, who I'll introduce in a second, was our interviewer and community liaison in the project. And we set out to find a very diverse array of Savannahans who could come in and sort of let us know what their involvement was in the interfaith community, why their motivations behind that, their background in it. And so that's really where we got our start. We filmed interviews, and there are participants who are among us today here, thank you for coming, from different walks of faith and different faith-based or interfaith efforts. And we did 30 of them over the course of 6 different shooting days during 2024. So it was a year-long residency. And I think our first one was in February?
Yeah.
Is that right, Nick?
Yes.
Okay, so we started in February, and then every few months we did another one. And then at the end, we kind of put a bunch in there because we were like, oh, we really need to cram some more people in. So I think our agreement with the city was like 4 when we started, but we ended up realizing we really need more than that. So that's where we got our content, was from these interviews, and it's through the words and thoughts of our participants that the story of Savannah is told, which sort of fits in the mission of the Community Memory Project. All the raw materials, as Luciana said, are going to the city archives. So what's on the website isn't the complete archive, it's curated sections, and I'll get into that in a second here too. So let me, if you guys don't mind, you can just stand where you are or whatever. I know Mickey's our a producer on the project. He sort of was a glue that made everything happen. You might have spoken with him if you were involved. And Tom is our community liaison. Tom spent years, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves instead of talking for you. If you want to say something, please come on up, Mickey. And
Yeah. This sort of. It's first thing I'd like to say is this: I've done a lot of media projects. This is one of the most amazing ones I've ever done. I mean, that's just having the opportunity to be able to talk to all of the people and feel the good and know about it. I mean, I grew up here and I was part of a lot of different things that were happening as I was a kid growing up and even into adulthood and different times. And when I want to thank Luciana and the city of Savannah for giving us the opportunity to do this, because it's magic.
it's true. I don't think it would have been possible for us to do it without the city's support. So, Tom, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just stay here if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I think for me, a couple of things. One, certain assumptions I had about who does what turned out to be wrong. I assumed there were some people that came out of very conservative congregations that would have a particular worldview, and they had a different worldview. So that was helpful to me. Some of my own biases got shaken up a little bit. That's always a good thing, I think. I was surprised at the many different ways people have figured out how to move their faith into action. And that was surprising, the many different ways that's been expressed. I was also surprised in the many different ways that each congregation thinks about its role in encouraging faith in action. Some seem to be more attracted to doing it sort of through like a more organized way. Others, as best I could tell, I mean, if there was a Christian that wanted to make the world different, they got a nod from the clergy and sent out to make it happen. And so that was interesting to me, much more on what your role instructor. It's in your heart, it's your obligation to go out in the world and do it. So that was interesting to me. And then again, just the power of the idea of we. I think we got to see the word we really be big and be muscular. in this, because so many different people from so many walks of life, all of them have found a way, at least in their mind, to express themselves for the common good of Savannah. That can't hurt. I'll leave it with that.
Thanks, guys. So, as I said, we did 30 interviews. Most of them were single interviews. I think we had 2 that were pairs. And 6 different days. Our process was basically to, we didn't get into this, I should have said. Tom was, what was your official title with the Chatham-Savannah Citizens Advocacy? Coordinator. So Tom ran it, okay? And for many years. And so through that organization, he knows a lot about Savannah and what makes it tick and the people who are involved in many different aspects of town. So having him on our team was really integral and really did help us to spread out and get as many people involved as we could. Mickey and I come from a video background, and so although we're Savannah residents as well, it helps that we had that element on our team to help sort of bridge the gap, make the connection, bring in the people. The city helped as a partner to promote this through social channels and to invite just the general public to participate. So nobody throughout the entire process was turned away. This is all sort of a twofold process. There's the main archive and the entirety of what we filmed, which are many hours of 30-ish hours of content. And then there's the website. And so that's what we're really going to get into now, is what the website's about. We were asked by the city early on in the process that since we proposed to build the website, and that it would be for educational purposes, the city asked that we would tie that to the state's Department of Education Standards of Excellence. In the case of the state of Georgia, students in 8th grade in public schools are tasked with learning Georgia history, the colony, starting with the founding of the colony. And one of the things that, of course, Savannah is the founding of the colony, and one of the things that they are actually tasked with in that, there's a subsection where they're asked to study faith and what faiths were in the early colony. And so we harnessed the expertise of Dr. Christopher Hendricks, who is a professor of colonial history at Georgia Southern University. And we sort of built this website so that teachers can take and use this as a teaching tool. There are 3 main content areas. There's the history section that is specific to that curriculum in 8th grade. There is the next section, which is more contemporary faith-based, interfaith-based outreach efforts in town. And then there is sort of something that I've called Common Ground, where there's sort of like miscellaneous comments that we curated from various participants in the project that I thought spoke to the motivations and reasons that people were involved in the project. So I'm going to switch over to the live view of the website here, and we can start talking about that specifically. I can find the actual, there it is. Got to close that thing. Excuse me a second. All right, that should be seen. Okay, good. So this is the live view of our site. It is interfaithsavannah.org. There's a rotating, randomized set of quotes on the homepage from some of our participants that we have spoken with. It loads in a random order every time. And just a little side note, you don't have to sit there and wait for them. You can swipe them manually. If you have a touch screen, they're touch swipeable. But our 3 main content areas that I'm talking about are laid out. The general gist of how to think about this site is, just like you read English, it's left to right and it's top to bottom. So if you just kind of bear that in mind, it really just boils down to that. And we'll go through a content page. They're all structured the same way. So once you learn one on how to do it, it sort of just rinse and repeat. This, in the beginning, is about faith in early Georgia. And we hear from our he's not here. He said he was going to try to make it, but Christopher Hendricks, our professor, is our guide for this section. We don't hear from anybody else in this section. It's just his expertise that's telling us about these different faith groups that were here in the early colony. We focus on John Wesley, who is here. You're probably mostly familiar with John Wesley. He is the founding principal character in the story of the Methodist Church. We had a group of early Portuguese Jews land here several months after the founding of the Georgia colony in 1733. The first Jews south of, I don't know, Virginia probably. Then there are the Salzburgers, who were a group of persecuted German Lutherans who escaped Catholic persecution in Germany and made their home in a town called Ebenezer, but have always been in the Savannah orbit. Then we have how African American congregations really got started in the South, in this country, and we have a page dedicated to the ones that started here, which are arguably, if not the first, among the very first African American congregations of the Black Church in America. And then a very peculiar, interesting event happened in 1806 that Professor Hendricks came to us with, which I thought was worth including. And it's a resolution that was written in the city of Savannah in 1806 that was 2 years after a great hurricane that wiped out town, and the mayor of Savannah invited a bunch of congregations around town to an interfaith service. What's really interesting is he included Mikveh Israel, the Jewish congregation. In 1806, America, to the best of Professor Hendricks's knowledge at this point, that is quite possibly the first interfaith service in the country. So it's another thing to probably warrants further study to determine if that's definitely true, but it's certainly one of the very early instances. So that sort of comprises the in the beginning section. These are sort of roughly chronological in how they're laid out here. And I'll just go to a page and we can start and look and see how it's structured, because they're all structured basically the same way. We have a little navigation guide at the top of every page just as a reminder, because it's possible to land on any of these pages just randomly from a Google search or something. So we thought it was important. Professor Hendricks actually asked if we could do this, and it was a good suggestion because of that fact that you could just randomly end up on this page and not know out of context how to read the material. But basically, again, it's top down and left to right. So it's mixed media because we have written passages, and then we have our some video segments underneath them. And the video segments are going to be numbered in the order that you should be viewing them. And then following that, there'll be a short conclusion. So there he is now. That's Professor Hendricks, everybody. I was just introducing him. So essentially, the way that you would read any page on the site is the synopsis. You would read the synopsis. You would watch the videos in order. On some pages, there is some text in between videos that, again, it's just read it as it flows on the page. And then the conclusion, and then you would navigate to the next page. So there's a little next or previous button at the bottom of pages when there is next or previous content. So that's really how it's done. It's pretty straightforward. There are going to be links to other information on various pages. Those links are, pardon me, open in a new window. And to get back to the site, you would simply close that window. So it's pretty straightforward there as well. And then there are, in some pages, this little blue box here with source material. So when there are authoritative, reference points of information, they're included in that little blue box on a given page. So we don't have a general bibliography or anything. It's sort of page by page. The next section, which can be taught as its own individual module, you can teach in the beginning and also faith in action. They do stand alone. It's not a prerequisite that you follow the curriculum on one to do the next one. But this is all, again, about our outreach efforts in town. We thought long and hard about this. Mickey did a lot of work on distilling what our main areas of outreach really are in town. And we did, of course, go back in time. We had the honor of having Otis Johnson, a former mayor, who was heavily involved in the civil rights movement in Savannah, talk to us about that and the involvement of the church, especially the Black church in Savannah, along the way as a critical element in how the civil rights movement was formed and supported here. And, you know, again, the very similar layout on each page. And this one has some of that interstitial text in between to help provide. So the important reason behind why you would do it in this way is that if you're reading the text and you skip ahead and you watch a video, the video is intended to support the text that surrounds it. So it's going to quite possibly be out of context. So that's why you want to sort of be complete on any given page in order to get the full picture of what that story is about. Then this is just sort of that miscellaneous stuff I was talking about, common ground, totally optional material, but provides some additional context and perspectives on some of the things. Now this doesn't load in any specific order, it's randomized every time, and that's to give no special weight to any specific comment. They all have equal weight in our mind. And I believe there are 16 of them on the page from various folks from various walks of life. And all talking about things like their personal motivation for becoming more involved in outreach, or, you know, their perspectives on what makes Savannah a unique, fertile place for interfaith activity in the first place. So there's some interesting things in here which can help inform students, but also just the general website visitor. And finally, there's a section on teaching resources. And in the teaching resources section, we provide 2 short quizzes. They're 10 questions each. You can take them online, or there's a PDF version. If you take the online version, you can go to the information at the top for your user details, and if you enter for email, right in that field, if you were to enter your teacher's email address, the results of the quiz will get sent to the teacher. So that's a good way for teachers to receive the results of their students taking the quiz. You can always put your own email address in there as well. There's like I said, 10 multiple choice questions based on the material, and at the end, there's a quick anti-spam question that you have to answer correctly in order to submit the test. So that's our in the beginning section quiz. There's quiz number 2 here is for the faith and action section. And then we also have some suggested essay questions, which provide some additional guidelines for students. So there's a basic question, and then, you know, some suggestions on how to structure your response as a student. This can be used by teachers as they see fit, of course. There are 4 questions for each section. Also, in this teaching resources menu, there's an additional reading list. These are with 8th grade reading level in mind. They are, you know, selected by yours truly, but you know, they present some additional information, I think, on subjects that are way bigger than what we have room to cover on the website. And of course, there's a contact form on the site to get in touch with us. There's a frequently asked questions list, and the first one, of course, is how do I use this website? All the stuff I just went over is in this frequently asked question. And I think it's pretty much self-explanatory at that point. I think that's about it for the website, at least from what I have. And before I turn it over to questions, I think Luciana wanted to talk about some of the web stuff at the city for the project.
So we've been on the frequently asked questions for a minute.
Sure.
So from the frequently asked questions page, it will also show you how you can link to the archival collection. So if you scroll down, some other questions like who participated as interviewees. So you have a list of all of the interviewees. because I believe not every single interviewee made it on the website, right?
Not everyone made on the website,
Right.
but they're all listed there, yes.
Yeah, but everybody did make it into the archival collection. There's information about how people were selected. How can you access the transcript or video files? So here are the links, how you can access them from the web page. So you can link directly to the archival collection from this website. And they'll also, how can I use the material? So you can use the material in the archives for other projects as well. So all of the original raw archival material is in the archives and can be used for future things. So this website is a final product of the residency team, but the archival collection, and I should have brought my glasses with me, thank you, is preserved in the archives for people to research and do other things with. So you can link from them here, but I'm also going to go directly. So if you link to the archival collection finding and inventory, it's going to take you to the collection finding aid, which gives you information about the archival collection. And that's what this is. And then if you scroll down, you'll see a full list of all the interviewees, and it gives you kind of a tiny little synopsis of what they talk about in their interview, and the date of the interview. And if you click on the interview, it's going to take you to the interview that you can watch the full length of the interview. So this particular interview you see is 37 minutes long, so you can watch it. We link them for public access through YouTube, so you can watch the full video on YouTube. If I go back, you also see there's a transcript. So the team created a full transcript. So you could scroll and you could read the transcript, which you could also keyword search the transcript as well. So that's very valuable to look at. So one way is to access that on the Municipal Archives website. We also have our Voices of Savannah, where we put all our oral history collections. So you can also go to the Voices of Savannah page and click on all of the same thing by the person. So we have a couple of different portals into the collection, whether it's from the Faith in Action page or through the archives page. The handout, if you take that with you, it has the Interfaith Savannah URL and a QR code. But we want to make sure that there are multiple access points into this archival collection, whether you're going at it as a student or whether you're going at it through the archives. We want you to be able to watch the full interviews, because there's a lot of really good information in these interviews that did not make it into the educational website, which had a specific focus, which was important. But there's so much more rich content in these 30 interviews with 32 people, which was really important, that we want to make sure we share moving forward, because it's going to have a lot more use in the future for other people doing other work as well. So, all right, Eric, I think I'm turning it back to you now.
Okay. Well, maybe stay up in case folks have a
Okay.
question. Anybody have questions? Participants in the project especially? Yeah?
You mentioned that they are on a YouTube channel. Is there some type of privacy setting so there's not unended fluidity of transfer? If a student is on the website and they're looking at your material, what's to keep them from getting content that is not appropriate that just happens to be on YouTube? Or is there some type of security around the archival material?
So there are some under the facts, like how can I use these materials? All of the participants signed release forms about use of their materials. There is information about how what on the website what can be used, and that's what Eric is showing on there, and you can talk about that versus how what's in the archives, the original materials can be used. So do you want to talk about the use of what's on the website?
Was your question more about how the students might see something that's inappropriate?
Yes, and the fact that are there some kind of protections, so all of this material is accessible, but just because it's YouTube, they can't just go out in general to
YouTube.
Any YouTube.
So okay, that's a good question. So the links that we provide on the website, interfaithsavannah.org, merely link to the city's website. So at that point, you'll see on any of these links when you click it. Yeah. So they have a permission form to share. I'll just click that as an example. You'll be notified that you're leaving this website. So if that pops up, we're no longer responsible for the content because you're linking to somebody else's information hosted on their environments. So that is basically, there are no direct links to those YouTube videos, but I would say, and I just hazard to say this, I'm not sure because I don't have an encyclopedic memory, but I don't believe there's anything within the material itself that would be objectionable for the audience in mind.
Well, not so much about your content, but just
because it's YouTube, I get it. You could clearly get to some other content.
And I think those types of settings, security settings in YouTube, are managed on the YouTube account by the user or their family. That's not something we would be able to control on the cities. And if I'm, as a parent, if I'm remembering correctly, that as my child, I'd have to put settings in place on my YouTube account to protect my child. Yeah. Right,
and of course, the only way to get to that additional YouTube content is to leave our website in the first place. So there are no direct links or embedded videos that are not specifically for the site.
And that pops up on every single time you click on any link, which can be a little bit frustrating, but that does happen every time
Any other questions? That was a good one. Content or otherwise.
Well, we hope that you explore everything. The website's got a lot of information, and share it with people that are in the educational field, because I think it's really valuable, and hopefully. We have trouble connecting with people in the different in the schools because they're so busy, and so we really sort of rely on people to connect out to them, I very specifically asked the team to tap into those standards, because the message I get from teachers is if they don't connect to the standards, they don't have time to deal with it. So if you do know any private or public school or homeschool teachers, please share this website with them, or take some extra flyers and share that with them.
All that being said, the website is perfectly usable by non-students, at least those who are classified as students. I think we can all classify ourselves as students.
Do you view this as once and done, or are you planning a part 2 or an augmentation?
That's actually a frequently asked question, and we have a short answer. Yes, it's a one and done, really.
For them, not for me. My hope is, so the residency project was funded once, but now that this project is done, I'm going to propose that they fund another round of the residency project, where I put out a second RFP for another residency team to come and propose a new community and a new project that will be completely different from this, with a completely different outcome, because and I don't think I said this at the beginning, the whole point of the community memory project is for the community to document and share their history through their own voices and so all these different lenses. So I really would like to see ongoing residency projects every year or every couple of years, and each one will be totally different. And I'm hoping that this is not a one and done. It won't be Faith in Action. It would be something totally different. So, yeah. So that's his answer, that's my answer.
Yes and no. Yes.
Yeah, a quick question about how this connects in with the standards curriculum, which is obviously.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Have you thought about, or are there plans to do some sort of a quick one-pager for teachers for them to understand where that fits in, or is it such a natural fit that it's an easy thing to introduce to them? They'll know right within the sweep of their curriculum where it fits.
Well, so we did, and I think I put it on the handout which specific standard it was. It is in the
Specifically,
website, but
SS8H2.
yeah. So this may be a little too dense. I mean, it's easy enough for me to make a simpler handout that I can send out to the schools. But that's a good suggestion for, I might need a flyer that says SS8H2 at the top in real big letters, but yeah, it is on the website, but we can certainly send something out directly to the schools that big, real big, like, hey, help you out with this standard.
And I imagine that the timing for when teachers are teaching this element of curriculum.
We're really looking at next year, getting it in.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's probably a pretty similar time of the year, right? So you can go to those with a pretty timely message of, hey, this is coming up, here's some curriculum that you can include in your
Yeah, that's a good point too.
lessons. Yeah.
Right, it's going to be early in the curriculum, I would imagine.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Oglethorpe landed and then the Jews did, so.
Yeah, if anybody has any suggestions for getting the message out, please let me know. Yes, sir?
Would this be something to present to the Board of Ed as a resource?
Yeah, so, we usually in the archives work a lot with Massey Heritage Center. They're kind of our link in.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear with the what center?
Massey Heritage Center. So Massey is part of the school district, and they work on a lot of the sort of historical educational programming, and they help connect us with like the social studies and history curriculum teachers. So a lot of times we use them to kind of get us in the back door of the school district, because it's hard to connect into the school district. But yes, it's routing. And I think I'm going to take his suggestion to make a more teacher-friendly flyer and push it back out, because we did push it out, but it needs to go back out. Yeah.
And just as a caveat that's kind of interesting, we spoke with historian Walt Campbell, who told us about the Unitarian community in Savannah in the 1800s, and this is a good tie-in that might be a good extra thing to bring up to the public school system. The Kate Baldwin Free Kindergartens, which were founded here, and we talk about on the website on the education page on Faith in Action. Walt tells us about how that was founded by a Unitarian and why, but they were very active here. It was free kindergartens that were started for poor kids who wouldn't have an education, because at that time most educational settings in Savannah were private in nature. And so this was free and open to everybody, and I believe there were 6 at the height of the free kindergartens, and they actually had a teacher training program as well. That was all folded into the public school system. So the early childhood educational components of the public school system in Savannah originated with these Kate Baldwin Free Kindergartens.
Can you, what?
Would you like to hear him say
Well,
that?
I'm just, does that say 39 seconds? I can't see.
That
how
is
long.
39 seconds, yes.
I'd actually be interested in just seeing one, see
Okay.
what it feels like to actually watch one. Thank you.
Sure.
So when George Johnson Baldwin returns to Savannah in the 1880s, he brings with him the memories of his family, as both sides of them were the most important Unitarians in Savannah. He sets up these Kate Baldwin Free Kindergartens. He starts funding them. They're going to be open to anybody in Savannah, They even have a black one get started, but it's named after his mother, who is the daughter of a Unitarian minister. So this sense of education. You know, he wants people to be educated.
So, again, his interview in particular is fascinating. He's in the process of getting started on a book about the Unitarians in Savannah. And we went down many different rabbit holes very quickly with Walt. But this one really stood out because it fit in so well with our education page on the Faith in Action site.
And the length of most of the unedited interviews is roughly...
The uncut interviews go anywhere from 35 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. Just depends on who it was, I think. So on this same page, just as an example, we also hear from Becky, who's with us here, about the founding of Bethesda. I'll play that for you too. It's less than a minute as well.
In 2033, Christ Church will be 300 years old. We will celebrate our tricentennial. Savannah's history is our history. Our history is, to some extent, Savannah's history and Georgia's history. These all kind of weave together. One of the things that first came to mind when I thought about the 300 years was Bethesda. Though it was not a project of Christ Church, our rector at the time, George Whitfield, raised £1,000 in England and in, I guess, what would have been the colonies at that time. And that had to have been a staggering amount of money. And was given 500 acres personally to start Bethesda. He did not stay in Savannah a long time, but he was our rector. So it did have, Bethesda goes back a long time, 1700s, and started there.
And so Bethesda is interesting because it's transformed over time from an orphanage into a private Christian school for boys that's still active today.
Maybe play a little bit of one of her raw things so they can kind of see.
Oh, so is this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Just
this
so
is
you
just
can
an example
see.
of our raw uncut video on YouTube.
The first name is Sakina, S-A-K-I-N.
It's her name. So it's really uncut. We hear how to spell their names, but I'll skip ahead.
I just started searching, looking for those answers. So I did kind of just go to different churches, went to holiness churches, Pentecostal churches, just different churches, religious organizations. Some I was a organization, I can't quite remember, I said Just Believe, I think it was, at the time, that had a slogan, and even looking at.
I just kind of wanted you to see, this got the timestamp on it, it's got metadata and stuff on it. So, I mean, it's everything. You're going to get everything from start to finish. So somebody that really wants, to see everything, they're going to see the full interview. I think it even has the slate, get hit at the beginning, and so.
Raw and uncut.
Yeah, which, there are researchers who want all of that. They want to know they're not getting something that somebody has taken something out of,
Context is everything.
Yeah. They want to hear the question, the full question, if somebody's, stopped talking for a minute,
And for an editor as well, the time code's really important because it helps you to build quickly an edit decision list. So that's why that's superimposed as well. So there's lots of great content. I really do. I find it interesting. I guess that's why I did the project. But I think a lot of people will find it interesting. There's a lot of great stories in Savannah. The history is fascinating and, connected to some major world events in some cases. And I just think that there's a bigger story beyond Savannah that we connect into. I think students will get that if they're paying attention. And I think there's stuff on here that we can all be proud of as Savannahans. You guys want to add anything, Nikki, Tom?
Obviously what we need now is we need people to use it. We need to figure out how to spread the word efficiently, effectively, and consistently over time so that we can give more people a chance to get into it and see how they can use it.
It is pretty timeless. It's evergreen material. It's not something that's going to expire. So I think it should be usable for a long time, I hope.
Well, and the other thing is too, there's just so amazing amount of people doing good things, helping people. There's a lot
It's
of
uplifting
stories.
to
There's a lot of
watch.
stories out there, you know.
There are.
And we did everything we could to get as many as we could, but there's that many.
It's a very frustrating process because we've reached out to a lot of people and, you know, it always happens. I mean, people say they'll participate and they don't show up, or, you know, you've reached out many times because you think it's a really important voice to hear from and they just don't show any interest, you know. So that happened to us and that's just a given. But I think all in all, we did what we could to get who we could.
Are there emails on the presenters or some way of getting in contact? Like, I'd like to know more about the Kate Baldwin stuff. So if I listen to this, am I able to find him?
That is not actually something that was released on the releases for people, so no, there is no contact information for the people. However, if you are interested in getting in touch with people for scholarly or just genuine personal interest, please use the contact form on the site and we'll put you in touch.